welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, Wize. My next guest is an author, a fellow podcaster with over 50 years of experience and a resilient spirit. Welcome to the show, Debbie Weiss.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. So, how are you this fine day?
I'm good. Great to be here. Happy to talk to you and your audience. And I just like Stuck in My Mind podcast. I can't think of a better name.
Yeah, it's been a great 4 years being able to do the podcast. So yeah.
Well,
Okay, so
congratulations.
let's jump right into it. So can you share that pivotal moment in your life that inspired you to chase your dreams?
Yeah, it was really when I turned 50. Something about turning 50 made me stop and think, you know, reflect back on where I was. But I think more importantly, look ahead and think to myself, if God forbid today was my last day, would I look back on my life with regrets? And I sure would have. And I realized that I don't want to be that person, and only I can do something about it. And when I turned 50, I had been caring for my loved ones since I was 17. And my friends insisted on taking me away for a weekend to celebrate my 50th birthday. And I protested because I didn't know how anyone was going to survive without me. And figured I'd go away for the whole weekend just being worried about everyone else. And I was wrong. Once I met my friends at the airport, the laughter started and I forgot all about my family members, and we had a wonderful weekend. And it was the first time in 30 years that someone said, "What do you want to do? And where do you want to eat?" And I kind of reconnected with things about myself that I had actually forgotten. And those two things combined just made me say, it's time. I have to figure out, where do I really want to go from here?
Okay. So how do you navigate through difficult times and maintain a positive outlook?
Well, I didn't on the outside, I always did maintain a positive outlook. And I think I am just naturally inclined to be positive. However, I was feeling sorry for myself. I had been, why me? Why did this happen and this happen and this happened to me? When I looked at my friends and family members, I felt like their life wasn't as challenging as mine had turned out to be. So even though I was still positive, I really was had a chip on my shoulder, you know? And it was that aha moment that kind of after 50, I started changing my mindset when I didn't even understand what mindset really was. I just kind of fell into it. Um, and once it helped me in one area, I thought, oh, gee, I was able to change my outcome just from changing the way I thought about it. If it worked for this, maybe it'll work for something else. And that's kind of how my journey began.
It's amazing because even for me, it it took me 44 years to figure out my purpose and what I wanted to do with my life, and what was because like you, I fell in a trap where things started happening, and I'm like, oh, why me? Why me? Like, am I such a bad person that all these things are happening to me? Why am I losing this such and such person? So, and I had to face reality that it wasn't necessarily happening to me, but it was just life was happening.
Exactly.
And so, when I finally got figured that out, things started changing. Like the mindset and all that other stuff started coming back because I was introduced into self development in early 2000s, and so when my wife passed away, I kind of steered away from that and got into that mindset of, oh, why me, or why me, and why am I was so what am I why am I so bad that all these things happen to me? So once I really kind of got out of that, things started really falling into place. Like I met the woman that I'm married to now. Uh, my life started changing. Things started happening for the positive. I discovered that I have a voice and I can impact people's lives doing my podcast. So it's like so at 44 in 2020, I discovered there is something out there for me to do. I have a purpose.
Exactly. I mean, my story is pretty much the same except I'm older. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I love that there is no time limit. You can't say, so I'm 60, so I can't say, "Oh, I'm 60. It's too late." I should practically be retired. Why don't I just forget about it? No. No, there's always time as long as we're on this earth living and breathing. I don't care if I was 90, I could do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. It's very important that you realize that regardless of what age you are, you're still capable of doing things.
Exactly. Or what your circumstances, no matter how dire they are, there's still something that you can do.
So what advice would you give someone struggling with limiting beliefs and fears?
Well, oh my goodness. I struggled with limiting beliefs my entire life, and I don't think that that's unusual. Obviously, they still hit me every once in a while, but now I recognize them. For me, the big aha moment was realizing that just because I thought it doesn't mean it's true. And so all those thoughts, we've been telling ourselves the same story over and over and over again for years. So it's just our way of thinking, and we just assume that it's correct. But when you stop to kind of challenge those thoughts, you realize, well, maybe it's not so. Maybe I am good enough. Maybe I am smart enough. Whatever it is that you feel about yourself, it's really your insecurities, right? That they deserve and need to be examined. Don't believe everything you think because it's not true.
And yeah, you're absolutely right. We've gone through so many years of programming of having people having our limiting beliefs as well as other people put their beliefs on you as well, especially when they say, "Oh, you can't do that.
Mm,
You're not capable of doing that." And we kind of get stuck in that groove where maybe they're right, and in all actuality, they're not. You can do whatever you set your mind to, whatever. It's just amazing because even with like when I started my podcast, it was not the most polished show. It took me improve going, keep recording, keep recording. And with every episode, I improved. So it took me just finally releasing that one episode and getting that like getting that off my back and like, yeah, let's just put it out there.
exactly. Oh my goodness. I didn't do it for the longest time, and I've only been at it for a little under a year now, and I'm still a big work in progress for sure. But why didn't I want to do it? The same reason that I think we stop ourselves from doing a lot of things. Well, I'm not good enough at it yet. It's not perfect. It has to be absolutely right. I have to be 1,000% ready. We're never going to be ready, right? We're
Yeah,
never going to be perfect because
it's
we're
never gonna
not
be
perfect.
perfect. Yeah. And it was funny because I had that belief at one time, and then as the more I did my show and just seeing everything, and then people would come on and they would have the same limiting beliefs that I started with, like, oh no, like I had a guest and she didn't do video, all she did was audio, and she's like, oh man, I love that you're brave enough to do the video and all this and all that. And I'm like, you can do video. She says, no, no, it's not perfect yet. I'm not ready. Da, da, da. I'm like, but you're doing video right now. You're a guest on my show. You're doing video. You're live on video. You can do video. I said, "This never gonna be perfect. If we wait for perfect, it will never happen."
You know what? I've got to say something about the video. When I first started with, having to go on social media, not my favorite thing. And they said, "You have to do video." I'm like, "Video? What am I gonna say? What am I gonna wear? I gotta make sure I hate to say it, I think it's a little bit different for women, I've gotta look good, my makeup has to be on, my hair has to be done, and those first few times, that's what I did, and just to make a one-minute video, I'm talking, and I had cards to make sure I knew what I was saying. Yeah, I was so uptight, and one day I was walking my dog as I do every morning, and I just thought, if I don't record this right now, it's what's on my mind and on my heart, I'm just gonna do it. And I did it. And I had no makeup, and my hair was in a ponytail like it is now, and people resonated with it. And once I let go of that, it was so much freer. It was such a great feeling because I don't wanna see someone who looks perfect all the time because I don't look perfect all the time. And here today is a perfect example. I don't have any makeup on and I thought, "You know what? Who cares? If that's what someone's gonna judge me for, then I'm not really interested in that person
Well,
anyway."
yeah, you're not really for that person, yeah.
No.
And
So,
listen,
it's we gotta get out of our heads. It's
oh,
hard.
people like, "Oh, is there a way out? You want me?" Listen, just come, show up, just be you.
Exactly.
We'll figure out the rest. We'll make the
Ex
rest of it work. It doesn't matter. There's no dress code here. There's sometimes I'm wearing a hoodie and a hat, and
Yep,
I'm me. I come to be comfortable. I want my guests to be here comfortable. You don't have to be uptight. I want you to just come here, have a good time, have a great conversation, and we'll let it go from there.
exactly, and I
A-
think that's what people wanna see.
Oh, and it tends to be some of the best episodes.
Exactly.
There's been times where guests have sent me, "Oh, these are questions guests feels comfortable answering," and I'm like, "Oh, well, maybe I don't feel comfortable asking these questions. Maybe I want to ask my question." Like,
Yeah,
this is my show, right? Yeah. So there's been times where people's like, "Oh," I'm like, I don't want you to be comfortable. I want you to come here and be yourself, be honest. So I'm gonna ask you honest questions.
exactly, and you give honest answers.
Yeah, definitely.
Agreed.
So how has your experience as a family caregiver influenced your perspective on life?
Oh my goodness. I mean, tremendously. So I became a caregiver to my dad when he had a massive stroke. He was just turned 46 and he survived, but was permanently disabled. He lived for 30 years. And my parents were soon divorced actually after the stroke. And he became my responsibility. So he did not live with me, but I was responsible for his money, where he was going to live, his doctors, all the other things that one needs to do. And being in my early 20s and having to understand the difference between Medicare and Medicaid and all disability, stuff you I don't even know what car insurance was. How did I know about any of that other kind of stuff at that point? That I think it did 2 things. At the time, I didn't realize, but looking back, right, I think when we all look back at all the hardships that we've had, we've seen how that has made us who we are today,
Mhm.
usually has somehow made us stronger or developed some kind of skills, and it certainly did do that for me. But it was it was very difficult to be so young and to have that responsibility.
I
Was not feeling as carefree as my other 25-year-old friends.
I could imagine that. I could definitely imagine that where you're like you said, 25 years old and you're responsible for your father, and you're just at the beginning of at the beginning of your life, learning how to live life, and and now you have all these responsibilities thrusted in your lap, and how are you supposed to take that?
Yeah. And in the beginning, I was thrilled to step up. I was daddy's little girl. If I could do something to help him, and I also think that um brought I don't want to say praise upon myself because that's not really what I was looking for, but I think it gave me a sense of purpose instead of, it took me a little bit out of my limiting beliefs and it made me realize I was capable and it made people look at me differently. And so that was certainly a positive. Um then when my oldest son was 2, he was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum and he's 23 now, has since added and changed diagnoses and has had a challenging life. But, you know, that is a whole different type of caregiving. And then my husband, for the last 5 years of his life, had both physical and mental illness, and then was diagnosed with a terminal blood cancer. And he survived for 6 months. And in those 6 months, I stopped working and was home with him full time. So it's literally defined my life and made me who I am today.
Can you share share a story from your memoir on second thought? Maybe I can. That resonates deeply with you. Like it's a really
Oh gosh, they all do. That's a that's a tough one. Let me think about that for a second. Any specific topic you want it to be about?
oh well, but
No?
something that really has impact. Like anything that has a major impact on your life.
Okay, so I don't know why this came to my mind, but it did. It was actually when I was 5 years old. Maybe because we were talking about limiting beliefs. And a lot of my limiting beliefs of not being worthy enough or good enough had to do with my weight. I was a chubby little girl. I've had a weight problem my entire life. And at that age, to think now the impact that this had is just so interesting to me because I don't think I realized it until I was older and really examined it. So I love to dance. I still love to dance. And back then, you didn't start formalized classes when you were 2 years old, right? So I think at 5 or 6, that was the first time that they had any kind of dance class available. And I was so excited. And I remember going out and I had to have, because I love pink, and I had to go out and have the pink tutu and the tights and the whole deal. And I walked into the class and I remember thinking at that age, those little girls look different from me. Look at how I look in these tights. Look at, you know, the bumps I have on my legs and, how I'm wider at the bottom and started noticing those things. But once we started dancing, I was good at it. I was one of the best in the class at 5. Okay, at 5. So I'm one of the best in the class. And the sense then of pride that I took because I kind of felt like, oh, maybe they're not noticing my lumps and bumps anymore because I think people were looking at me, at least this was my perception, looking at me differently because, oh, look at that chubby little girl. She can really dance. And so loved the class. And in springtime, the teacher announces that it's going to be the recital. And of course, I'm so excited. This is my first recital. And I get cast as I don't honestly recall if it was one main lead character or a couple, but I do think it was one. And they chose me. Now, back then also, they had costumes. You didn't have to go out and buy them. And one day I walk into class and one of the moms who was helping the teachers came at me with a measuring tape. And she measured whatever part of me and she said to the teacher, she won't fit in the costume. And I ran out of there crying and would never step foot back in there again for the rest of my life. And I know that woman, that mom, had no idea, maybe she thought I didn't hear, maybe she thought it didn't make a difference, whatever she thought. And it's always been a huge regret of mine that something that I love to do so much, I didn't do because of this experience at 5 years old.
You're 5 years old. It's understandable. Like you're 5, you don't know about regret and all these other things. Now that you're older, and you said, yeah, but it's not easy when you're 5 years old and you hear someone say something like that. It could be very traumatic. Like I know I was a chubby kid when I was growing up, and then as I got older, I got into sports, and so I kind of leaned out and stretched out.
Yep.
But yeah, it wasn't I could imagine it wasn't easy hearing someone say that.
Mm-mm. Not at all. And then that was just the start of it with all peers and stuff teasing
Yeah.
me forever. But this was a little different just because, now as an adult, I haven't really I've taken a couple of different types of dance classes, but now I just do Zumba and jazzercise and stuff for fun, and I get to really enjoy it, and I love it, and it's great and all of that. But I do think back and, think, "Wow, maybe it would have been something I would have enjoyed through my youth." Who knows?
Yeah. So what motivated you to start the online store, A Sprinkle of Hearts?
So, one night, it was November of 2022, I was a month and a half before my husband passed away, and I was scrolling through my phone shopping for something. And I went in the search bar and I typed hearts, which I do all the time because I've always loved hearts since I was a little girl. And all of a sudden, I don't even understand why it popped into my head that particular night. It reminded me that when I was in college in Washington, D.C., back then there was a store that only sold items that had hearts on them. And I loved this store. I wanted to live in this store. And I told my friends, someday I'm going to have a heart store. I don't know whether it's going to be this one in DC or I'm going to open a different one, but I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And they got sick of hearing it. And I graduated and, went on to do whatever I studied and literally forgot about it until almost 40 years later that night.
Mm.
And then it dawned on me, it's 2022. I don't need to have a brick and mortar store. I can now my dream can come to reality online. And I, had a connection and I called her and I said, "Well, I don't have a lot of money and I don't have a lot of time and I don't want any inventory." Like, I gave her all the things, and, she said, "We can still do something. It might not be exactly what you were thinking of, but with those requirements, we can still make it happen." And 2 months later, it was online and open. And actually, I'm wearing a sweatshirt from there today. You can't see, but I am.
Awesome. So how do you balance running an insurance agency, an online store, and you're a host of a podcast?
Yes. Well, I am extremely lucky and grateful that I've been an insurance agent now for 29 years. It's my second career, and I have just the best team who doesn't need me. And I I don't have to be involved in the day-to-day operation. I'm not the one answering the phone and helping the customers and doing all of that. Of course, I'm there to, overall run the place and any problems. Of course, I'm there for that. But that really has gives me time to, do all these other things that just bring me such joy.
Awesome. So, what role does laughter and staying active play in maintaining your well being?
Yeah. So I've also always loved to be active. I played sports as well, which has been, a wonderful part of my life and continues to be as an adult. It for my it besides what it does for my physical well-being, and the same this goes with laughter as well, right? For my mental health, it's incredible because I could be, you asked before, how do you deal with all the caregiving? The amount of stress that I was under, that I was not relieving when I was not prioritizing my own self care, which for me would be physical activity as one of the things. I was like a ticking time bomb. If you said hello to me and you sounded funny, I might just, what do you mean by that? Because I was so uptight. I could walk into whatever activity I'm doing and be stressed out, and I never leave feeling that way. It's like I walk out and it's this big exhale because whatever it was that I was doing, that's all I was focused on for that hour or however long I was doing that activity. I forgot about everything else and it just all melts away. And that's what you need. You need to step away and take care of yourself regardless of what's going on in your life. There's always time to do that and it's necessary to do that.
Okay. So, how do you inspire others to live their best lives despite their circumstances?
Well, my memoir, that was, how I started with just sharing my story. Maybe other people could relate to some of my circumstances, or it doesn't matter, even if those circumstances that I talk about are relatable. You at least know, as we said in the beginning, or as you said, this is life. Everybody's has stuff.
Mhm.
And so I think that inspiring and showing people that none of that stuff makes a difference. It's all us. And, when I learned, one of I am also a certified Canfield trainer in his book, The Success Principles. And one of the things that he talks about in there is taking full responsibility. And because actually I'm an accountant, that was my profession I guess, by trade. I'm a numbers girl, right? And like those kinds of things make sense to me. And in the success principles, they talk about an equation: E plus R equals O. I was like, okay, it's an equation. I get that. I'm a math kid. E is the event plus R, your response, equals O, the outcome. So something happens in our lives, right? And it's you respond to it, and the two together determine the outcome. I'd never thought there was an R part, right? I just thought something happened and that's the outcome. Something happened, that sucks. The outcome sucks. I was taking myself out of the equation. You know, did I have control over the fact that, my husband died or that your wife died? No, I couldn't we couldn't do anything about that,
Mhm.
but we can control how we react to that. And if we're not happy with the outcome, well, then the only thing we can go back and look at is the R. How are we responding? Maybe if we change that a little, we'll be happier with the outcome. And that really resonated with me. It was tough to realize on the one hand, oh, oh crap, I'm responsible for all of this, you know? But then it's empowering because if I'm responsible and I don't like what's happened for the first 50 years, that means I have the power to change it, regardless of all the things that are swirling around me. And that's what my goal is to let everybody else who was like me or you who didn't know, who just thought, well, this is it, huh? This is
Yeah,
the cards I've been dealt. There's nothing I can do about it.
absolutely.
That's
And
not the case.
yeah, no, it's not. And it took me some time to figure that out. And when I finally did, it was like a big burden lifting off me. Being able to
Exactly.
realize like God isn't out to get me. He's not doing this to me intentionally.
Yep.
It's not happening to me on purpose. It's just life. It happens. And I can either take the lumps and pick myself up or continue to play the victim and stay down. And I'm not built that way. I have a mom who's resilient, who came over here to give her children a better life, and she left her family behind in Puerto Rico, came over here in 1973, and changed the better. Where now she has over 20 something grandkids, over 40 something great grandkids. She's even got great grandkids.
Oh my goodness.
And we just buried her last month. But she lived
Oh,
84 years, and
I'm sorry.
she lived her life the way she wanted to.
There you go.
So seeing her live her life the way she did, and me going through my struggles, and then coming to face them, and just getting to finally truly live my authentic life, who I want to be, who what are my goals, what is my purpose. And so just seeing her live her life, it kind of it just inspired me even more.
I love that. I love that because I think the same thing. I hope I'm doing the same thing for my kids, you know? That and especially because they've seen both sides of me, you know? They saw the before and after. And so I hope that I inspire them as well to see that they have options.
Definitely. All right. Can you discuss the importance of resilience in achieving personal and professional success?
Oh gosh. You know, without it, it's so easy. Well, let me just use an example because I was actually just thinking about this. I was an accountant for 10 years from Long Island. That's where I worked for 10 years. And then I got this opportunity to move to New Jersey and become an insurance agent for a major carrier through a friend of mine that I went to college with. I didn't know the first thing about insurance. It didn't sound much better than accounting. um, and, you know, my friend was really trying to sell my husband and I. Actually, we were just engaged at the time. And I had no sales background, but he did. And she said, "Oh, it's perfect. He can do the selling and you have the business background and blah blah blah." And okay, great. She got us all excited and said we were going to do it. And it was so much harder than I anticipated. And in the first 3 weeks, so at it's not done this way anymore, but back then I started with business that I inherited from another agent who had retired. And the company sent out these letters. And it was just like they had no idea, and it said, "You're assigned to this new person." Well, at the same time, the agent's son was also became an agent, and the clients didn't understand, you know, behind the scenes how this whole thing worked, and he was taking over basically his father's agency. And in the first 3 weeks, I had 500 people call and scream at me for stealing the son's business, and called the company and asked to be transferred back to the other agent. And we had no money. I had no idea what I was doing. We were living in my friend's basement, and I cried every day and every night. And I wanted to say, "Forget it. Let me just go back to what I was doing. This was a ridiculous idea." And I have to say, if it weren't for my husband, but really my friend, because my friend had, she kinda, like, stuck her neck out to get me this opportunity,
Yeah.
so I felt like I couldn't do it to her because I was so grateful. So I had to stick in there. The first 2 years were one challenge after another. If I had not been resilient, and again, my natural tendency really was not, because it was so, so hard. I never would have, 1, proven to myself that I can, right? And what laid on the other side, look at where I am now, where I just told you that I have the most incredible team, and, it's allowing me to pursue my passion and what I feel is my purpose. And it also gave me so much freedom when my kids were little and my oldest son had issues and I needed to do things. And when my husband was sick, I mean, and it gave me job security, like so, so, so many things. So I think that if we don't face our fears, if we don't continue to push, then we're really missing out on what is waiting for us on the other side. And we build our we show ourselves what we're capable of, because we all are capable. It's just so easy to turn away when it gets rough.
Yeah. It's easy to give up when you fail.
Yep,
It's just much easier to give up, but I'm glad you didn't. I'm
me
glad
too.
you kept it up, because you wouldn't be able to come in and share your amazing story. So
Well,
what
thank you.
what strategies do you use to stay motivated and focused on your goals?
So I really try. I have, really stick to my morning routine, which is new for me in the last 5 years. I never understood a morning routine and all of that kind of thing. But beside 3 mornings a week, I do go to an exercise class at 6 a.m. But in addition to that, I do meditate every day. That's super helpful. I also journal. Sometimes I don't get to free form journal, which is something I only started doing about 2 years ago, but turned out I really loved. But a strategy that really helps me is to always identify, what are those top 2 or 3 goals that I'm working towards, and in the morning, set my day up at a minimum to say, what are 2 or 3 actions that I'm gonna take today to move me towards that main goal? And they can be really small things, right? But I do find that when I'm intentional about taking those actions that make me feel good, like it is one little inch closer, that, it just fuels the fire, so to speak. And then, you want to continue. It's so easy. And I do it, it's so easy to be like, oh, I turn on my computer and then it's the email and then it's who called and then there's a problem and a message and all these things. And yeah, some things you do have to address right away. But I'm a morning person, not and I think you have to be aware of when you do your best work, right? So I'm trying now to write my second book, and I got to do it in the morning.
Mm.
And so I really try and stick to that goal of, every day it might not be able to be at the same time because of a schedule, but I know every day, when's my writing time? And that means when I want to pick up my phone because I can't figure out what to write next. And so I might as well just check my email. I cannot do that. So it's holding yourself accountable.
Yes. So how do you define success, and how has your definition evolved over the years?
Oh gosh. You know what? Success is living a happy life. I, you know what? I used to think, right? It's about money. No, it's not. Mm-mm. It's not about any of that. Just like you just talked about your mom, my aunt just turned 85. And I mean, she's comfortable enough, but I look at her and I think about some other older folks that I'm thinking about, and the difference is you can just tell her being with her loved ones, with her children, grandchildren, great grandchildren. That's all she needs. It just fills her up. And I look at her life and I can, she actually became a widow in her 40s. And so she certainly had a lot of challenges, but in my eyes, her life is so incredibly successful because she's enjoyed it. She's enjoyed the journey, and she has so many people that love her and that she loves. And that's all she needs. And that's success to me. And enjoying the journey, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not about the destination. My whole life changed when my journey changed, when I started changing my journey,
Yeah.
right? That's when everything changed. I think to myself too, okay, here's all my goals. What's going to happen that's different? What am I going to feel different then than I feel now?
Yeah.
Probably nothing, because I'm feeling it all now because it's just, this excitement and fulfillment
Yeah.
and happiness.
Now is the part of the show where you get the solo screen. You get let people know where they can find you, the website, the books, the podcast, everything.
Okay. Well, thank you. So the website's the best place for pretty much all of those things. One stop shopping. You can get it all from there. The website is debbier.weiss.com. The R is important. Otherwise, you'll wind up on a realtor in California. And so you can get the Amazon link to the book on there as well, and information about the podcast. The podcast is called Maybe I Can. And you can also find it on the website.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for being such a great guest. I greatly appreciate you stopping by and giving us some of your precious time. So I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me in the great conversation. It was wonderful.
Oh no, and yeah, well, you're welcome anytime. When
Oh,
you
well,
write
thank
that
you.
second book, you definitely come back and come promote it and talk about it.
I would love to.
But don't leave just yet. Let me close out the
Okay.
show and we'll chat a little bit off the air. But thank you once again for being such a wonderful guest.
Thanks.
All right, now it is time to acknowledge some people in the chat. What's going on, Corrado? Thank you for stopping by, brother. Greatly appreciate it. Corrado's been following me since my first audio episode. I greatly appreciate you, brother. Appreciate the support. I don't know how many times I got to tell you, but I will continue to tell you because you are there every single time. So I greatly appreciate it. As always, a big shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. To the boss lady, appreciate and love everything you do for me and our family. And as always, a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless you. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.